My boyfriend is 29 and wanted to go on vacation this summer to his mom's friend's house in Hawaii. The plan was for the two of us to go with his two best friends, a 25-year-old guy and a woman his age. We had been planning the trip throughout spring. Eventually, the guy dropped out, so it was just going to be the three of us. We've been together for 9 months, and things have been serious. We've even been discussing moving in together. Everything pointed to this being a long-term relationship. Then, in early June, after the guy backed out, his female friend called him and said she didn't feel comfortable going on the trip if I was coming too. She barely knows me and didn't want to feel like a third wheel. She told him flat out, if I came, she wouldn't go. He and his friend made new plans without saying a word to me. Just the two of them are going to Costa Rica instead. At the time, I was still figuring out what dates to request off for summer. I hadn't heard anything in a while about the trip, so I asked what week in August I should plan for Hawaii. That's when he told me about their new plan and casually mentioned that maybe he and I could take a trip to Mexico later. I was hurt and brought up how I felt. We ended up agreeing to take a trip to Copenhagen, a place we both wanted to visit, as a compromise. I also asked to meet his best friend, just to feel more comfortable about them traveling together. On July 4th, we went to visit her and her boyfriend in another city. It was nice to finally meet her in person, but honestly, the whole visit felt cold. She wasn't friendly toward me at all. My boyfriend even pointed out that she seemed distant, not just to me, but to both of us. I tried really hard to connect with her and her boyfriend. I'm a friendly, outgoing person, and it's usually easy for me to get along with people. But after several days, nothing improved. The dynamic between her and her boyfriend was strange too. They were cold with each other and even got into a few arguments about their future, particularly about his upcoming 3-week solo trip, which happens to overlap with the trip she's taking with my boyfriend. I made an effort to get along with her, hoping it would ease my feelings about their trip, but after we got back, I told my boyfriend that I still felt uncomfortable and honestly hurt about how everything had been handled. I'd really tried to create a sense of harmony between all of us and asked him to come up with something that might help me feel more secure about the vacation. Later, when we were visiting his family, they asked about the trip. Once they heard how he had changed all the plans, they were shocked. His family told me that if they were in my shoes, they'd be furious. That led to a big argument between me and my boyfriend, during which I once again asked him to come up with something, anything, to help me feel more secure and respected about him going on a trip with her without me. He said he'd never do anything like this again, but honestly, it didn't sound very convincing. He vaguely offered to cancel the trip, but everything was already booked and paid for. I didn't want to be the one to ruin the vacation and end up resented by both him and his friend. He told me I should just tell him what to do, that I should figure out what would make me feel better. But he kept dragging it out until the day of the trip finally came. He bought me a small bag of candy, and I drove the two of them to the airport. I felt crushed and completely devalued in the whole situation. I'm thinking about ending the relationship, but I also don't want to throw away something that's otherwise been genuinely good. Update 9 days later. The day I dropped my boyfriend off at the airport, I was incredibly upset. He sent me messages, but I didn't reply. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want to make any big decisions while feeling that way. The next day, after I had time to think, I sent him a message saying I hadn't felt safe or loved with how the whole trip was handled. I told him I'd be leaving his things at his place and giving the keys to the neighbor. He called me, but I didn't pick up. Later, he texted saying he didn't understand what was going on. For the rest of the week, he kept calling and messaging me, but I just couldn't bring myself to respond. On Thursday, I think he realized I was serious and started asking practical questions. I told him which neighbor had the key, and that was it. When he came back and found all his stuff at home, he started panicking. He called and left me a long voicemail. I was at work all day and honestly didn't want to talk to him even afterward. He kept asking me to explain, saying he didn't understand what was happening. The next day, I sent another message, clearly telling him that it was over. He got angry and bombarded me with texts, saying he couldn't believe I was throwing everything away. He left a voicemail full of frustration, saying he didn't understand why I was so mad, that he didn't accept the breakup because I hadn't given him a say, and demanded I explain everything in person. I didn't want to respond. I tried to stay calm, but it really got to me. So I sat down and wrote him a letter. I tried calling him first, but I started crying and told him I'd just send it to his email. Here's what I wrote. Being apart gave me the space and clarity I needed. I've had time to think about what I truly value in a relationship, and I've come to the conclusion that we're not right for each other.
I'm sorry for asking you to change things in your life that you shouldn't have to change. Not for me, not for anyone.
But from the beginning, the way this trip was arranged felt incredibly disrespectful. Your friend gave you an ultimatum. Either she goes or I do. And you chose her. You didn't even try to introduce us first, even though I was supposed to be your serious partner. That would have made sense. You didn't suggest she bring someone else along. And most of all, you never actually consulted me. For most people, that alone would have been enough to end things. But I stayed. You have a history with this friend of yours, one that I still don't fully understand. There were rumors that you two spent the whole night together while you were dating someone else, even though supposedly nothing happened. I also realized that at some point you had feelings for her, at least theoretically. And then she started dating her current boyfriend and that door closed for you. As I understand it, it took her boyfriend a long time to feel comfortable with the fact that you two stayed close friends. But it seems like you put in effort to make him feel secure, however long it took. And now this woman, someone I don't even know, unilaterally decided to exclude me from the trip. And you didn't even tell me that happened. I had to ask you myself, so when are we going to Hawaii? Before you finally admitted you'd already changed the plans. You were buying tickets for the two of you while I was cooking dinner. We had guests over and you disappeared into my room for over an hour to book flights for the two of you. I asked you several times to come to the table and you just kept saying, just a few more minutes. There was absolutely no reason that had to be done right then, in the middle of that situation. Your friend lives in the same time zone as us. She works a normal 9-to-5 job. She could have booked the tickets herself. That night, my stomach was in knots. Just to feel a little better, I said I wanted to meet her. At my request, we arranged a short trip to see her and her boyfriend. And during that trip, as you yourself admitted later, they were unexplainably cold toward us. Our very first conversation was about how she had messaged you privately when you were still in another relationship and ended up convincing you to start dating her. You also told me about her most recent conversations with you, where it became clear that her relationship is anything but stable. I told you that made me uneasy. And even with all of that, I still wanted things to work. For you, for me, and even for her. At that point, I was planning to be with you long term. I didn't see any point in trying to stop you from going on a trip with your best friend. I wanted to make it work. But every detail, every little thing about this trip kept making me feel more and more uncertain. When we told your father, mother, grandparents about the trip, they were all shocked. It became painfully clear that this was a risky move, especially given how fragile our relationship was at the time. We'd only been together for 9 months. How long did it take for your friend's boyfriend to feel comfortable around you? We talked about that at the climbing gym in the car, while booking the Airbnb for Copenhagen, and again when I said once more that this whole thing made me feel deeply uncomfortable. Even though I asked for your help, you ended up asking me to come up with something that would make me feel better. And I couldn't. People in committed relationships shouldn't have to go through this. People in loving relationships don't act this way. Well, except your best friend, apparently. In the end, it all comes down to this. My emotional needs were unmet to such a degree that it became a point of no return for me. We had beautiful, really good moments, but also a completely unnecessary amount of emotional pain and confusion. I can't be okay with your relationship with her. Maybe I could have given you an ultimatum, her or me, but I don't want to do that. I want you to keep your best friend, and I want to walk away. I truly loved you, but I'm not going to keep fighting for this and spend the rest of my life hearing you call me crazy for not seeing how purely platonic it all is. That's like asking someone to change their favorite color or convince themselves to like a different kind of food. I don't feel good in this relationship, and I don't want to feel this way anymore. This doesn't require mutual agreement. I don't need your permission to break up with you. He sent me an apology letter. He took responsibility for almost everything, except one thing. He refused to acknowledge that his relationship with her could make me feel uncomfortable. He didn't accept that I might not be able to live with their closeness. He said the only thing that ruined our relationship was the way I saw things. I replied that trust has to be built, and he placed far too much weight on the foundation of a relationship where that trust simply didn't exist yet. He agreed, and he apologized again. So, for me, things ended quite peacefully. But this dynamic just doesn't work for me, and nothing he said has changed that. I'm sticking to my decision.